What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, LaFon Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. What if confidence isn't a mindset problem, but a nervous system one? Today on Grasp Confidence, I'm joined by Dr. Amelia Kelley, a Penguin published author, TED speaker, and trauma-informed therapist who bridges neuroscience and lived experience. Together, we're going to unpack why high performers, especially highly sensitive ones and deeply perspective people, lose self-trust under chronic stress and how regulation changes everything. If you're tired of pushing through and ready to lead with safety and clarity, listen now and tune in because this conversation just might change your life. Dr. Amelia Kelley, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a big fan of your work. I was fortunate enough to see your TEDx performance live in person in Raleigh in North Carolina. And I started listening to your podcast, and of course, we know a lot of mutual people. So I thought, why not come on the show, share some wisdom, and enlighten this audience as well with all of the things that you know that can work for people. So thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me and for being at the TED Talk. I wish I could singularly see everyone that had been in the audience.
I know, it was a big audience. Well, you are like hashtag goals. I want to say that really quickly because one of my big goals for this year is to land a book deal. I'm really working towards that. And, my passion really is helping other people lead confidently, become confident. It's not always easy, though. And I mean, I don't know if you echo this with your experience, but from my experience and just working with entrepreneurs, right, and helping people start businesses and build their brands, they sometimes lack that regulated nervous system. And what I have found is that it's almost a vibe we send out. It's kind of interesting, right? That other people can feel and receive. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I like that you're pairing confidence with the nervous system because I think for some folks, it's hard to conceptualize what confidence is. I do think it's good to start with defining, and you might have done this on another episode, but the difference between confidence and self-esteem.
Ooh, let's go. Let's do it.
Yes, because I think they get very confused at times. So confidence is what we'll talk more about today, but it's the knowing or the belief that you can do whatever it is, whether it's learn a new skill, get up in front of a crowd, parent, speak up for yourself, bake without having the cake fall apart, whatever it is, however small or big we think the thing is. And the confidence comes from, what we'll talk about today, from a felt sense and from actual nervous system responses are coupled with confidence that we can unpack. On the other side, we have self-esteem. And I think a lot of people will say, well, if you have a high self-esteem, you can go do the thing or you can stand up for yourself. But in actuality, they do work together. It's kind of like how compassion and empathy work together, but they're different. So self-esteem is actually just the knowing that you deserve to be treated well because you are a human. So it's I deserve safety. I deserve support. It's a knowing that you are valued. So the self-esteem comes from a sense of self-value, whereas the confidence comes from the sense of ableness. And the interesting thing is that you can meet someone who is very proficient in one and not the other often.
That's interesting,
Mhm.
right? So I relate to this a lot. I
Yeah.
feel like for a lot of my childhood, and I feel like a lot of people may resonate with this, I didn't have a high self esteem,
Mm.
right? I grew up in a home that was not conducive for that. It was a lot of times uncertain,
Mm.
right? And I never felt growing up worthy.
Mm. Mm.
And then, of course, as an adult, it manifested in different ways as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lack of standing up for myself. Even if I was the best higher performer on my team, I
Mhm.
didn't feel the worthiness of asking for a raise. Right.
Mm.
So this impacted me a lot, not just the way I felt about myself,
Mhm.
but also my financial success in life. I
Mhm.
think that's really important to bring out because a lot of times we're chasing these outcomes of success,
Mhm.
but we're not going to the root cause of why we feel this way to begin with, right?
Right. Mhm.
What do you think about that? Can you unpack that a little bit for as a therapist?
Yeah, I know. And that's the funny thing always when I'm in my podcaster hat is I can't divide the 2. You
I
know,
know, right?
the longer I've been podcasting, I started with like the list of questions and now I've just gotten into I just use my honestly my natural skills, which is more
Yep.
therapist oriented. So, when I was listening to you, something you said really stood out to me because it proved the point that I was just trying to make about that you can be really strong in one and not the other.
Right.
So you can be someone who on paper or for all intents and purposes is high achieving, is capable of standing in front of a room, is capable of rising to that next occasion in some ways, but when the self-esteem is not there, it does limit how far you can rise. Because to your point, you were saying, I deserved it. I believe now it sounds like you can reflect now and see that you deserve the raise. But at the time, without that self concept, that self awareness leading all in that bubble of self esteem, it's a lot harder to speak up for yourself. And so I think it's this very common trend that can happen where we think as a society that the more we accomplish, the better our self-esteem will get. And so we think, okay, if I can just grow my confidence, and it's funny, I know you want to talk about confidence. I almost feel like the baseline of confidence, though, is the self-esteem piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we try to skip ahead to confidence, our accomplishments can feel a lot more shaky, unstable, less authentic. We'd be more likely to struggle with things like rejection sensitive dysphoria, things like that, especially if you're neurodiverse. And so, starting at the concept of like, I am worthy is so crucial for your confidence to be able to just take off.
Wow. Yes.
Mhm.
Truth, truth, truth. So, what do you do? Right? What do you do if you're at a place right now and you want that level of success?
Mhm.
You want to feel confident. You're tired. You're so tired. You're tired of feeling like you're being held back.
Mhm.
How do you build that worth, that sense of self-esteem to begin with so that you
Mhm.
can, really anchor it in confidence and have sustainable success?
Well, I think this is a beautiful moment to bring the nervous system in,
Yes.
because again, I think it's a similar phenomenon where if we try to build our self esteem by going straight to confidence, we struggle. And then if we back the train up and we try to build our self esteem by going straight to positive self thoughts, mantras, sticky notes on the glass, all of these things that are great. I mean, there's not a disvalue to them, but again, it's almost like you're skipping ahead without looking at the baseline then to self esteem. And so that's where the nervous system is really important because we have essentially two different types of memories. And I'm not trying to do neuroscience breaking apart memories right now. We're just talking about the nuance between implicit memories and explicit memories. So, an explicit memory is you have a timeline, you can tell the story, you can gather information. This is how this happened, and then this, and then this. But the thing of it is that things that erode our self esteem are usually not stored explicitly because they're hard to make sense of, because they're repeated. Potentially, they're subconscious messages. Potentially, they are. the things like gaslighting or marginalization or abuse. And so what happens there is that because a lot of this doesn't make sense, it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense to have a caregiver mistreat you.
Right.
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense for someone who's supposed to be your protector, whether it be, medical provider, teacher, whoever this is, not care for your needs. And I love medical providers and teachers. I'm not saying that anything, but we think about things like medical gaslighting, for example, is kind of what I was saying in that vein. Is that when that happens, it can be so difficult to reconcile that it stores itself more on a nervous system level. It bypasses the cortical brain, the area where we think and we reason and we plan, kind of like our workbench. And it permeates into that older, deeper reptilian brain, the amygdala, the area where we decide whether or not safety is in our vein, whether we're safe or not, whether we can engage. And so self-esteem feels like something. And for anyone not watching, I'm like using my fingertips to kind of like give like the essence of it. And so it starts from what I've seen with my clients, from the ability to ground your nervous system and even notice yourself, even notice your body, which can feel very overwhelming and sometimes scary for people who don't feel safe in their body. And that's why it's so crucial. I am a strong proponent for the role. And if you're someone listening who says, I want to do all the things, give me all the ingredients for this recipe, I'm a strong proponent for finding a trauma-informed therapist, if this is trauma, who is aware of this bottom-up approach, in addition to coaches who can take what you unshake and you rattle out in the therapy room with this co-regulation, with our bodies working together in a safe space, and then say, I felt this, I have these new ideas, now help me go implement them into the world. That's why I love collaboration of different, different avenues and different types of expertise.
I love that. And I'll just be honest, everyone. I had a therapist. I also had a coach, right?
Most people have had a therapist.
Yeah, I've done all of the things. So I
Mhm.
did not heal by myself. And I think that's really important too, because, this day and age, we see people go from 0 to a million overnight, it looks like, right? And
Mhm.
you think, oh, this was all them. I can't do this. So I must be faulted. I must be this. I'm deficient, XYZ.
Mhm.
Guess what? If we go to any sports, right, professional sports team, they have coaches, they have
Mhm.
people that work with them. There's a reason why they're at the high echelon that they are. They have people that they work with. So I think
Right.
that's important, as high performers, as leaders, as people who want to gain success and confidence. It's
Mhm.
important that, we address these root causes and
Mhm.
work with somebody who's, in my case, a trauma informed therapist, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
To help us, break through so that we are not bound, because it does feel like chains sometimes. So that we're not bound as much by what happened to us, but we
Mhm.
can break free and, climb to where we want to go. What
Mhm.
you said a little bit ago, though, really resonated. You talked about external validation, and if we don't heal these root causes, I think a lot of people, especially that I work with, they're striving for this external validation, this approval, a magazine cover, a TV appearance, a TED Talk, a book, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And all of these things are great. I'm not saying anything about them. I help people with these things.
Mhm.
But if you don't have the healing behind it, you're going to be chasing the next.
Mhm.
You're not
Mhm.
going to be appreciating what you have. And it's always going to feel incomplete, right?
Mhm.
What do you
I would agree. I mean, it's interesting when I even think about the journey that I've been on in my own career so far. I remember having this amazing conversation with my shaman,
love it.
Bloom
Okay.
Post, who I met through a cacao ceremony in Raleigh, and she's just like magical. She's just one of those people you just feel healed just in her presence. Hi, Hey, Bloom. But I was just talking with her about something related to my work, and she had said, so many coaches and so many like I'm saying business coaches, like people who are like really trying to, they ask you what your goals are. They ask you, what do you envision? She instead asked, how are you in your work?
How are
Like,
you in your work?
how are you
How are you in your
in
work?
your work? Not
Okay,
how are
okay.
you in your work? How are you doing? But like, how are you as a person and what you care for and what is the thing that lights you up and the gifts that you have, not the gifts that someone else has, not the things that the people on the magazine cover are doing, but like, what are you offering to everyone else that is a gift that you have that you now can give and unselfishly? And it was such an interesting perspective because it pulls away from external validation. It's still a very empowered way of looking at striving, but it was more, it tapped into my helper healer, mentality where, well, okay, so when I write this article, for example, there's something I want to teach and I want to give to people, but why? Like, what is it about this that makes me feel like I am connecting with others and giving to others? And I think that's an interesting part of building our sense of self is the nuance between seeking someone else's approval has a very external energy, like a yearning energy, like you were saying, like
Yes.
striving and it's
Yeah.
never enough and fill my bucket versus being witnessed and seen in an authentic way where you're just being yourself
Mhm.
and then allowing this, like you and I both know Dr. Amna.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
love Dr.
ever met someone
Schwer.
who's more affirming? She is so encouraging.
I love her.
Like she just is like she's so encouraging. And that's what I'm talking about. Like a lot, not just being around someone who says that, but opening yourself to receiving it.
Huge.
Right. Which,
Huge.
if you're someone who's listening, who struggles on a nervous system level with
Yeah,
self esteem, can feel really uncomfortable.
yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. Let's stop there. So, all right, confession. So, growing up,
Mhm.
my mom, and she's still this way, God bless her.
Mhm.
She cannot receive something.
Mm.
And, I noticed this over and over again growing up. So, she would pray. Let's just an example. She'd pray for some kind of money or something to come her way.
Mhm.
And when it came her way, she couldn't accept it. And
Mm.
I remember actually saying to her at one point in time when I was a kid, I said, God is not going to write a check for you, but he will send someone else to bring it to you.
Mm. Mhm.
And it's not enough for us to sometimes show up. It's not enough for us to give to others solely.
Mhm.
We have to be able to receive,
Right.
right?
I
But
love
that's
that.
not always easy though, right? Especially I feel
Right.
like with women, I could be wrong, but I feel like more the women I work with at least,
Mhm.
they have a hard time receiving even if it's a compliment, Amelia.
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you
Well,
think?
and that really, I mean, that goes to that nervous system piece of confidence of, and I would say this to anyone listening. The next time someone gives you any sort of affirmation at all, check where that lands in your body.
Okay, what do you mean?
Where
Like
do you
how it feels?
notice where do you notice a sensation? So it could be, let's say it's a positive sensation. Let's say you're someone who's done a lot of work on this and you've worked through the like you're saying, the expectation that women are supposed to be able to juggle so many things. And I was actually speaking with a client yesterday about this who's really hard on herself. And as she's saying all this, that she should, I always tell my clients, stop shoulding all over yourself. And so, so she's saying all of this to herself. And then I paused her and I said, now I want you to imagine saying the same things that you're saying now, but to an adult version of your daughter. And her face just went whoosh, like she couldn't. It
And
struck her that she would never think that her daughter should have to run a company, be a, killer mom, killer wife, clean everything, plan the things, do all of it, and regulate yourself. Like, do all this and stay regulated. No, no, ma'am. And so when you think about like the ability to not have to do it all, um, you really okay, I lost track of myself, Tara. What was I talking about before?
Oh, I
I
you
hope you
know,
can edit. You can edit, I assume.
it's fine. It's totally fine. But
I
no,
thought we were talking about her. What was I saying?
yeah, I think it's, we're talking about so your client, it's not about shitting all over yourself, right? I think
Mhm.
that was a good takeaway and not feeling like we have to do all the things, know all the things, master all the things. And if you were to talk to even your daughter or your
Mhm.
best friend or a younger version of you,
Mhm.
I think about that a lot. Like, that's how I visualize. I try to, if I'm feeling negative about myself or about something, I visualize myself as my younger version of myself. I say,
Mm.
I would never say that to that precious child. Right.
Mhm.
And guess what? That child is still in here. You
Mhm.
don't have to beat yourself up all the time. And
Right.
I think that's a huge key to it as well. It doesn't mean you don't think negatively ever again. Right. But it's that when you do, you can notice it, you can name it, you can put a label on it and say, "You know what? No, no, no. Oh, oh. We're not gonna go down that rabbit hole
Right.
right now," right?
And I do recall, when I was saying that when someone gives you a compliment and you feel it in your body,
Yes. Yeah.
first noticing where you feel it, if it's a positive thing, if you've done the work. It might feel like a warmth in your chest, a softness in your belly, a softening of the shoulders. This is almost your nervous system receiving the message. But unfortunately, for a strong majority of us, all folks, but especially women, as we were saying, you will probably notice a tightness
Ooh, a tight
somewhere in your body, a tightness, a tingling, a heaviness. And this is where your resistance lives in your nervous system.
Mhm.
So when the person gives you the accolade, the congratulations, whatever it may be, I encourage you to purposefully ask that part of your body to receive it.
Okay, so let's say you give me a compliment and I
Mhm.
feel tightness and stiffness in my shoulders.
Yes.
What should I do at that moment? So the first thing is acknowledging it,
Yes.
understanding where it is, okay,
Noticing is big. That's
noticing.
that's almost the whole thing at the beginning is noticing is very important.
Noticing. And
Mhm.
then what do we do after that? So, all right, so you give me a compliment. I notice my shoulders get stiff because I see this
Mhm.
a lot with people. Their
Yeah.
shoulders go up to their ears, right?
Mhm.
What do
Mhm.
I do next? How do I calm myself?
Well, you just did it. You dropped your
Drop
shoulders.
your shoulders.
So allow your body to do the opposite action of whatever the holding is. So invite
Ooh,
the openness. By inviting openness in your body, it sends a signal to your brain that you're more open for the compliment or for the support or for the positive energy. Because we have to think about the fact that there aren't specific happy neurons and happy pathways and sad pathways. Our body and our brain are constantly reading each other. So our brain and our mind, as we call it, our thought process is assessing from our body what's happening. And then we very quickly, at the speed of light, fill in the blanks of what's happening. So the same way my nervous system felt before I was getting on the TED stage is very similar to how my nervous system felt, I don't know, maybe on the day I was getting married or
mhm.
before I'm going to get on a fun ride at a theme park. There can be all these different stories that can be attached to a sensation we feel in our body. So it's really important to know that when you get tight like that, if someone is paying you a compliment, even if it's a tightness in your jaw, wherever it is, if you loosen that tightness, you are inviting the compliment in.
I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. And I feel like this is where gratitude comes in as well. Gratitude helps you receive something,
Mhm.
right? So if you can appreciate something, it helps you keep it. And I
Like
think we
that,
don't
yeah.
yeah, we don't talk about that enough because I think it's really easy to brush off compliments or brush off this or brush off that.
Mhm.
I wanna run something by you as a
Mhm.
therapist. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I hit the nail on the head. I try to be as neutral as possible.
Mm,
So, w- me growing up with a sense of low self-esteem, low confidence,
mhm,
XYZ, I really chased external validation for a really long time from other
mm,
people, from other things. I was on the cover of Forbes a couple years ago, and it's interesting. I was chasing it, chasing it, chasing it, and then it came and I felt nothing.
mm,
And then just like I was saying earlier, I was, all right, what's next?
mhm,
So that really was a huge like turning point for me to say, I feel grateful all the time. Doesn't matter what comes into my life.
mhm,
I'm grateful for it.
mhm,
And it's kind of just that grateful but neutral approach that I take that has
mhm.
been a game changer for me, at least. I don't know if that's great advice. Maybe you could help
I think it's wonderful advice,
me good
actually.
advice.
You're practicing 2 very important things at once. So, you're practicing growth mindset
Okay.
because no matter what comes to you, you're finding gratitude in it, and that's where growth mindset originates. We need to be looking at even the stumbles and even the things that don't go the way we want as growth points, and when we look at them as part of the journey as opposed to a finish line, we can be more creative. We can think outside the box. We can go back to the batting cage again and again until we get the thing. So I love that. You're also practicing a little bit of dialectical behavioral therapy of having, non attachment.
Yes,
You're not
non-attachment.
right. You're not hyper
Yeah.
attaching to the outcome
Yeah.
because the problem is we've talked a lot about external validation, but we have to remember that you have a whole system internally too.
Yeah.
Right. So if anyone listening has any familiarity with internal family systems, it's a type of therapy and a way of theoretically looking at us, the mind, who we are, as a collection of parts. And within this, you are going to have managers. And a lot of those managers are going to help you in a lot of ways when they're not running the whole system because any part of us will get overwhelmed and exhausted if it's in charge all the time. So if you have an internal manager who is like the motivator, for example, you accomplish the thing, you get on the Forbes you said magazine, correct?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
get on Forbes magazine and the manager is thinking, "Okay, great. What's next? Let's keep going. Let's get the bottom line." Like that's the manager is going because that's their role. And so when you're saying that you lean into gratitude, it sounds a little bit more like what the self feels like. The center of the self. And for anyone who has no idea what that would feel like, if you've ever meditated, if you've ever fished and looked off the dock for a while, if you've ever climbed up a mountain and sat at the edge and looked and thought, whew, I got here. That feeling of release and openness is very connected to yourself, which the self energy, which absolutely aligns with gratitude. I love that.
Well, it keeps you present-minded as well, right? And
Hmm.
it's that grounding,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And that's what was such a game changer for me, and that's why gratitude is the first thing that I teach when I work with somebody.
Hmm.
I was all over the place at one point in time. I'm sure if you put my nervous system on a heart rate monitor, not that that's possible, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
it would look like a heart rate monitor, right?
Mhm.
My husband is the complete opposite of me. He is neutral
Mm.
all the time. I rarely see him go up or down. He is steady as as it comes.
Mhm.
And it's interesting though, but I feel like that's how I used to be. Everything used to
Mhm.
just spike me up or down. But through this work, what I've realized is that the gratitude aspect really has grounded my nervous system as well.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, and if it's not something that happens overnight, right?
Mhm.
This is a daily practice. This is a lifestyle.
Right.
It's the same thing as if you go on a crash diet, you may lose 5 pounds, you may gain 15 back. It's not
Mhm.
that. It's
Mhm.
about a daily practice and a lifestyle. And this is, by the way, like 3 years in the making. This did not
Mhm.
happen overnight. All right. I'm not an overnight success. Nobody is.
Mhm.
But this is 3 years of daily work and practice.
Mm.
So but it's possible.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that I've realized from just interviewing super successful people like yourself, like others, is their nervous system is really regulated.
Mm. Mhm.
And they're the calmest people in the room.
I mean, it's funny because as a highly sensitive person myself, and I also was very curiously thinking, wonder if you and your husband took my HSP quiz
I should take
at
it.
my website. Yep. So if you go to ameliakelley.com and you click the like, am I highly sensitive? You guys could both fill it. I would be so curious to see which of you falls a little bit more on the sensitivity scale because
Me.
I would guess.
I'm so sensitive.
But the thing is, you just made such a good point though, because sensitive individuals actually can be the most amazing, successful, influential individuals when they have the right environment. So by you doing the work you're doing and the gratitude work and just your curiosity taking you into these things of how do I heal or how do I just continue moving forward, the nice thing is that someone who's highly sensitive may end up in therapy more often. They make up about 70% of people in therapy, but they get more out of it. So when I think then you were saying your husband's like a lot more even keel, I would guess, just guessing that he might be a little bit, lower on the spectrum. But just to throw this out there, it's even gender wise. Men and women has shown an even presentation of sensitivity. So I don't want to make anyone think this is like a female trait or something. This is a nervous system trait. And you were saying the calmest in the room. It's funny because I think about in some ways, because of being highly sensitive, we all get dysregulated. By the end of the day, it's almost like 3 o'clock. I know. Is this going to be a day where I can handle taking in all the input from my family at the end of the day? Or is this going to be a day where I need to go take a hot shower to regulate my nervous system and say, give me a break before I re-engage in the world? I think that's the work, is knowing that just because you might feel dysregulated at times, it doesn't tell the whole story. And you can take care of yourself to regulate. And guess where that starts? All the way back with what we were saying with self-esteem. Because if you don't have a sense of self, if you don't want to care for the self, that's where this reparenting and all of this comes in. You're going to be less likely to help regulate yourself.
So profound and so true. And this is why I'm so passionate about this work.
Mm.
It's, if we don't take care of these foundational elements,
Mhm.
it's not about, I feel like, as a society, we look at building the roof
Mm.
first, right?
Mhm.
What is the shiny thing we can put on top? It's not about that. It's not
Mhm.
about the roof.
Mhm.
You have to pour a stable foundation, just like in construction. And in my
Mhm.
TEDx talk that I did in 2004, I talk about it. And I have confidence as the analogy of a construction project, right?
Mhm.
You have to build a strong foundation.
Mm.
And the environment of the foundation is important to your point, because if you build a strong foundation, but it's on sand,
Right.
gonna be effective. No.
Mhm.
So the environment is really important, who you associate with, what you let in, right?
Agreed.
That's so
Mhm.
crucial. And then you pour the strong foundation, and then you can start with your pillars, and then finally at the end, your roof, which are the shiny things.
Mhm.
That's so important. Amelia, what piece of wisdom would you have for somebody who's listening to this right now who wants this? They want a regulated nervous system. They're
Mhm.
tired of every day feeling like a record player and they
Mhm.
want to break free. They want to break that cycle. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, I think when someone is listening to everything we're saying, the idea, I think we're giving a good picture of it, but I think there's something really crucial for them to remember that it's not, you don't have to sit down with a self esteem workbook or a
Mhm.
confidence workbook, even though there are probably some wonderful ones. You don't have to accomplish this checklist of all these things that is going to bring you a sense of self and then in result, confidence. Every action that you take is a it's a stake in the sand. It is an effort towards self-esteem and confidence. So if you say, to your point, I feel like this person doesn't feel good to my nervous system. Like I don't feel relaxed around them, or it could even be something more neutral and preferential. I'm just not interested in them. That's okay too. Like you could literally just say, I don't find this person very interesting. I don't really want to hang out with them. Within reason, obviously, some coworkers and there's some people we can't make that choice with. But every time that you make any choice that is regarding your preference or your desire, you are making an effort for your self-esteem. Like you are nailing down that foundation. So please don't think I need to, oh my gosh, this is a great episode. I need to go do 100 things now. No, in emotional and individuation, just having your own opinion, even telling you're at the cash register and the cashier says, it's really nice out today. And you look outside and it's raining and you're thinking, oh, yeah, I guess so, but I'm not really a fan of rain. You can say that. And that might sound confrontational, but it's you just expressing your opinion. All of those little things are these efforts towards exactly what we're talking about.
I love that. Listen to your body. If
Yes.
somebody you're around with doesn't feel right, listen. That's it. Your intuition is there for a reason. So listen to it, lean in, and see what happens.
Mhm.
Amelia, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast today. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned into this episode. I hope this episode helped you increase your life, increase your success, increase your confidence. If you loved this episode, list in Apple your favorite takeaway of what Dr. Amelia said in a review. I read each one personally and love every single one of them. We will catch you on the next episode. Take care.